Today's chat is brought to you by, well, all of your support. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through Podbean's crowdfunding, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a patron of the FFC, please be sure to visit our website and click on the support link. Even a single dollar helps, and for those of you who are already patrons, thank you again for your generosity. You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search, focus that fire. And so we come together. Join us. Join the discussion. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Welcome back for episode 166 of Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on April 26th over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Our topic for tonight's episode is going to be a look at the lore book, The Warlock Aunor. But first, let's run through a quick introduction of those on the show for tonight. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86. We also have with us our own master social media, the one and only Green-Eyed Music Lover. Green, hope you're doing well. How has the week treated you so far?
It's been okay. So life has been interesting, as it wants to be half the time. I have been to Kansas and back. My wife has been, literally. And my wife has been to California and back, as well as Kansas and back. So, and then now my sister and mom are up here with us, and they're happily sleeping in the other room. Thank God for having multiple bedrooms at this point. But it has been both a blessing and a challenge. Life has been kind of a challenge lately. But I'm always happy to be here and chatting with you guys and thinking about things that do not relate to real life. So yeah, let's go.
That sounds like almost a guilty pleasure of yours, Green.
I mean, I may be pitching my own episode coming out this next Wednesday. Yes, I may be shamelessly pitching my own stuff, but it's okay. We all have our guilty things that we're guilty of with our guilty pleasures, and it's fine. But yeah, it's been okay. I mean, you and your... Never mind, I'm just going to stop.
All right.
Going to sit down and stop.
Sure.
I was about to pitch Nifty Nut House again, but I got into a whole lot of trouble for doing that during the show.
It's infecting everything.
It's so good. Anyway.
Rounding out the usual team, we have our good buddy, the lore content cop himself, Beard Grizzly. Beard, how are you doing?
Well, running Shattered Throne. You were earlier.
What?
I'm not the only one.
I've got
you guys are so crazy.
I don't scream about it, all right?
Hey, to be fair, I did not scream that much about it while we were on air. That much. Yeah, hey, I qualified it. Okay, I qualified it.
I feel like Green and I are on this particular mindset on that one.
I love how chat's giving me grief. But, we were kind of talking before the show started about what our thoughts. I mean, I wanted to kind of take a little bit of a break and from lore and talk about actually what's going on in game, because I think that's, Green, you made a good point about that before we started. It's something that is relevant right now. And like the whole thing with the revelry, like what are your guys' opinions on that? I'm personally I'm enjoying that. But Jesus.
Yeah, I think from the PvE aspects it's been great. The PvP aspects, of course, have not been so much, but at least the PvE aspects, I think it's been a fantastic little thing to mess around with.
I'm loving the forest. It's so much fun.
It continues to make me think that we need to have it like all the time, more often at least. I don't know which.
It's so relaxing.
That's the thing is, even without, like, I'll play sometimes, obviously right now I'm playing, or I was playing, the Shattered Throne, And now I'm probably going to go run through Forest while we chat tonight on this, because it's not super difficult, but it's also not super monotonous. Thank you. Gosh, I don't know where my head went with that word. Like you have to pay attention, but you don't have to pay like super attention. Like and it's also just got that really spring palette of color, you know, and it's just,
and the music's really nice.
Yes. Yeah. Well, but I mean, what I'm saying is, like, even without the music running, it's still just really, and then they have like the little hidden chests that apparently no one goes and gets except for me. I don't know why.
Well, there's a few that get it.
It's cracked me up. I saw someone on Twitter and it's like, am I the only one who's doing that? I'm like, nope, I do. Plus 8 seconds.
So I've been spending most of my Rivalry in the Crucible because of Iron Banner this week, because I'm working. I got it.
She's been so happy. She's been so happy.
It hasn't. I will say this: it hasn't been bad. The things that drive me crazy right now in Rivalry is that I am one of those dirty hunters that will wear Gemini Jesters, go in with the class ability boost, and dodge anywhere around your team to take away your radar. I wouldn't even shoot at you half the time. Like, it's not about me killing you at that point. It is me just taking away your radar and making sure my teammates can shoot you.
Right.
Running up against a whole team of Gemini Jesters is just painful. Not as painful as running up against skip grenades and arc bolt grenades, because dear God, the arc web, buff, the buff to that is so stupid. You can kill an entire team with one grenade now if people move around too much. And it's like, I don't know how to handle this right now. Like, I just can't adjust. But the grenades spam in game is crazy. I saw one of our own, Shay did a 40 kill game, burdened, I believe, with Worm Husk on, because that's not broken. It's fun, but it is incredibly frustrating at the same time. What I do like about it is forcing you to change up your gameplay. And any amount of tonic being used in PvP right now really, really changes how you have to play and what they're using. If you see Gemini Jesters on the other team, you have to be prepared at any point to see that coming up. If you see Worm Husk or if you see skip grenades, you have to go long range. You have to switch up your game. Otherwise, you're going to have just a terrible time. So it's been kind of fun to learn how to adjust on the fly so much, but it's also been real annoying to deal with skip grenades all the time.
See, and the funny thing is you're saying that, and all I can think of is you're talking, like, to me, what I'm hearing is it's basically Destiny's version of a light Super Fiesta.
It is. That's a really good comparison.
I am a huge fan, which explains when I do jump into, like, I have played a little bit of Crucible for the triumphs on the Revelry, and I'll be honest, like, I don't have a problem with it. Like, I've actually really been enjoying it. More so than I normally do.
I think
but
it's
that actually,
the reason that I get into Mayhem as well, just to point that out.
Oh God, Mayhem!
Oh, yeah.
I love Mayhem. Yeah, though it's, oh my gosh. But yeah, no. As you were saying that, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, I bet you that's probably the same people who cannot stand Super Fiesta in Halo.
Which I am I'm an admitted person who really hates Super Fiesta.
But that similar game style is just like that over the top, just craziness. Just because with Super Fiesta, for anyone who doesn't know what Super Fiesta is, it's basically all the max legendary power weapons, or actually just max legendary versions of weapons, and you never know what you're going to spawn in with. And so, if you don't play Halo often and you decide to jump in for an evening with Blue, that's what you're playing. And
Ben and I will just shoot the same. They don't shoot the same. Like, Destiny fusion rifles make sense to me. The railgun does not make a lick of sense to me. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, no. And as soon as you said that to me, I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But that's, to me, that's how I like de-stress myself. So that actually, you were saying that, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Why I don't have a problem with, I don't have the same complaints with the Revelry that I've been seeing a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just don't, I guess I don't pay attention to those aspects of it as much as other aspects of it.
Well, you don't play PvP as much as I do, too.
That's very true. That is very true.
No, I'm going to say it's a difference in how all of it is, which I think kind of comes other partial point of what was brought up too, with like Not Forgotten and as Hal. With not owning the weapons, I can't really comment too far on like how I think things will handle. But I will say, in a game that is based on having multiple weapons and multiple styles of play, shoehorning yourself into one weapon, one gun, or similar is not very conducive to allowing for a lot of different play styles. There are certain maps that are a little bit more geared towards Luna's Howl and so on.
Yes. Right.
And the vice versa is also true in terms of other equipment that is out there as well. But largely, I find that those weapons are used in varying situations with good reason. They are expressly good in a lot of situations, even at range.
Which, interestingly enough, like looking at the notes about what they're changing, it's mostly going to mostly affect the Magnificent Howl perk, isn't it? Isn't that what they're really working on?
That's the whole impetus behind it, is to cut down on its general usage and what it's capable of doing. But it's not going to actually tone down on the weapon itself, which I think is great.
I think that is an interesting move, and it'll be... I know that a lot of the PvPers are like, well, that's going to basically completely change the feel of the gun, which I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point, but...
Kind of the whole idea behind it, yep.
But I don't think it's going to be as significant as they're thinking. Now, granted, it's going to bring up a different meta. I don't think Luna's and Not Forgotten are going to be as prominent in Crucible, which is interesting because I don't know if it's just my bracket that I'm in, but there's at least 2 of those weapons in any given Crucible game for me now. I see them constantly. So I don't know if that's saying that, hey, you're good enough to get the weapon, which is, great, thanks for the heads up, guys, or it's more of, it's so popular right now that no one will take it off once they have it.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be an interesting tell on that one as well, to be honest.
So Lux from my clan, Lux Regalia, he's predicting, and I happen to believe him with what I've seen so far of these guns, that Ace of Spades is going to come back and be in the meta, as well as Service Revolver here on console. It may not be the same on PC, but I can really see those 2 guns taking charge now. But Crucible with green, courtesy of Hydra. But anyway,
the one complaint that I do have, this is about on par with my normal complaints. I want to keep the ornaments.
The wings and stuff like that?
I have the little deer horns, and then I just got the wings. I think I still need to pull the I think is there like elven ears, I think is the other one.
How do you get those? Like, I haven't even started trying to get those.
So it's all through Eva's package that you get the whatever the taunt, not the it's tonic.
Gotcha.
Hang on, I'm running up to her right now.
It's like the dust and stuff.
Yeah, so like, you know how you power up the Reveler's Essence? That's what it is. It's 75 Reveler's Essence, and you get a what's called the Reveler's Assortments package, and it basically is just like it's basically an in-game loot box. I mean, I know people hate that word, but that's really what it is. But you're using the essence, which you gain through running like. You're just anything really, but you can gain a lot of it by going through. I don't think I've ever fallen below like 300 this entire event.
Did you buy Arbalest?
Yeah. I mean, but I mean, Arbalest was 300, but when I went to buy it, I had 700. So again, I mean, but I also run Forest. I run the Verdant Forest like all the time, because again, like we were just kind of talking, it's like it's just so much fun. I just really I can lose time just running that constantly. And if you do that and you open the chest that you like, the hidden chest in there, they'll give you like 10 or 15 a pop. You know, you just you can rank up, plus daily bounties. Basically, if you start following the triumphs, you'll start just collecting all of it. And what you do is it's 75 essence per box, and you just buy them. And there's just an RNG ticker basically, and I think there's 3 ornaments. There's the horns, the wings, and I want to say there's ears. And so yeah, it's like I got the wings, and the cool thing is like it's the same thing as the exotic ghost projections. They change based off your subclass, which is really useful actually, because what I've noticed in strikes is we'll load in, because I solo queue, and like a lot of the weekly challenges is run a strike with people the same subclass as in your fire team. Well, with these ornaments, you can tell immediately what light or what subclass other people are running, so you can change up and you can get those challenges a lot quicker. It's another one of those like little things that just it actually really helps for at least for solo queuing. It's just those little signs. Now, they also are a giant target for those who run into the PvP with them, as I found, because I keep forgetting to take them off. And they're ornaments on your helmet, and they're very glow. They are glow. I mean, it's like glow. Running in
Crucible with a Sentry set or an Invader set or any of those.
Yeah, it's that off. Oh my gosh! Well, and I'm the person that just completely forgets about it, and so I'm like, I'm getting shot so many. Oh, because I have giant orange wings on my head. That would be why. Yep. So yeah, but I mean, I really like the aesthetics of what they've done with the tower. I just really like it. I'm actually kind of sad because the ornaments are going to be going away with the got one more week. Yeah, with the end of the event.
One more week. I'm glad they made it 3 weeks though.
Yes.
Because if they wouldn't have, I would have missed the entire thing because I was gone all last week. So it's
that, and the other change that they made that I really appreciate is they lowered the requirement for the orbs in Crucible for the Triumph. So you have hang on, let me load it up real quick. On your events, there is a one that's called Verdant Light Competitive, and currently it's stated that you have to generate 200 orbs in Crucible or Gambit. But you can only generate those when you're affected by what's called Revelric Light, which is when you take a tonic. Well, the tonic broke the competitive.
It's only available in Crucible now because it was breaking Gambit.
It was breaking Gambit, and so they took it out so you can't do that in Gambit. And so then what basically a lot of people kind of pointed out was like, well, that's a lot harder. Like it's a lot harder because you have to do a precision kill. It's a lot harder to get a precision kill in Crucible than in Gambit when you're running against just NPC ads. And so they lowered that. So now instead of 200, they lowered it to 20. So if you have 20 already in Crucible, you'll get it retroactively. So all you have to worry about is clearing the other triumphs to get the party harder. Which will be the one with I believe it's the emblem. I can't remember which emblem it's called, but the triumph for the emblem. And so that was, I think that was really cool. I really like that one. Or I like that change. I think that was a really good change. Because the other change that, what was the other change that we were talking about? You and I, Green. The Zur thing.
The
invitation. Yeah, with the tower. The invitation this week is there's a confusion, or there was a overlapping code basically that they set it to allow for NPCs. There was basically a bug in which the NPCs weren't required to be on the destination that they were basically taking place on. So they fixed that, but in doing so, it broke the way that one of the strikes, which is I believe it's the Prison of Elders strike. I can never remember the name of it. But it has
the one with the Varix.
Yeah. It has vexing.
Oh, the Warden of
the Servitor.
Warden of None, I think, right? Is that
Warden of None? Yeah.
Warden of None. Okay. So anyways, but that's where you were supposed to get the Vex kills for the Tangled Shore, because technically that's part of the Tangled Shore, considered part of the Tangled Shore. But when they rewrote the code to only allow for NPCs on that destination, it cut all the strikes out. So
right.
all the strike, and so that's where the whole issue this week with the whole thing. And I've seen a lot of people kind of throwing words around that. It's one of those things where it's like, be careful if you don't really fully grasp what you're complaining about. It's not, I know it's a lot of people have been quick to say this, but it's not because Bungie didn't quality control things at all. This is basic, coding 101. You change one thing and something completely unexpected breaks. That's just reality of every coding position I've ever worked with or ever interacted with. That's always happened. And they've been pretty transparent about what's going on. Now, the problem is that until they fix it, we can't complete that invitation. And it's just like, well, it kind of sucks, but
right.
So yeah, that was the thing that I think came out really today, was because obviously Xur popped up.
Can we talk about another elephant in the room? The ones that you guys posted in our private chat earlier?
Oh.
About
if you really want me to get down on that tangent, because that's a.
I mean, I don't.
That I've got.
I'm curious about the thoughts about it.
Oh, okay.
Because
sure.
It's definitely worried some people. I've seen some worried people on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So for those people who may not know, Jill and I can't remember his first name. Joe, which I think he was on the raid team, wasn't he?
He was the raid guy, basically. Yeah. I don't think he showcased himself often. I think he was on a couple. I shouldn't say that. He was on a couple like ride-alongs and whatnot, at least. But he was very vocal. I know on Twitter occasionally.
And Jill
talked on a few things.
And Jill, who's one of the writers she did a lot for, I believe, the Iron Lords, and she's just been writing with them a lot. And she's the pun queen, which makes me so sad that they have both had their last days at Bungie today, which is kind of bittersweet. I wish them the best for sure, but a lot of people are kind of freaking out about it right now. Because that's the fifth or sixth person in the last month that have moved on.
But hang on. So here's the thing with I know a lot of people are jumping to conclusions on why they're leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So first off, don't do that. Here's a little known secret, or I guess a
little known fact.
Little known fact, I guess would be a better way of saying that, because it's not really a secret, but it's kind of a fact. In business, what happens a lot of times with behind the scenes for especially benefits packages is that a lot of times there is a grace period after the beginning of each new year that you have to be employed by the company to still receive the full benefit package from the previous year. So for my company, for instance, we have to have, if let's just go out on a limb and say I was to leave my company, which I'm not, but let's say I was going to, if I choose to leave in any time before the end of January 31st, I lose the entirety of my benefits, for my 401k for the previous year. I don't get the payout that's owed based off the benefits packages that are there. That's a pretty common factor. And so what a lot of times you'll see a lot of movement within businesses within the first quarter, maybe the end of the first quarter, which is, hey, that's where we are. We are at the end of the first month in the second quarter. And so for me, it's not really a surprise that you're going to see a lot of movement around this time. We're seeing a lot of movement in our industry right now, because that's exactly what's happening. A lot of people are hitting that mark where they are going to be able to take their full package, their full benefits package when they move. And, I know everyone likes to point out, these evil corporate overlords, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of times it comes back to these individuals are, they might have found a better opportunity. They might be on a different career path, whatever. There's not always a nefarious purpose behind movements. And
right.
And the thing is like a lot of times those decisions have been made. Like those decisions might have been made 6 months ago, but because of certain, I hesitate to call it politics, but certain requirements from a monetary standpoint or a professional standpoint, they have to wait. And that's not uncommon at all. That's actually, really, like I said, that's really pretty common. And you'll notice that a lot of times. I made a comment earlier this week because this is about the time that for those in professional services and for like behind the scenes support, DevOps and stuff like that, we start getting a lot of solicitation calls. Like today alone, I have gotten about 15 or 20 headhunters calling my cell phone.
Yep.
And it's just, I mean, I'm just being kind of blunt. It's just part of the yearly tradition of the new year, the new quarter. First quarter's over, so it's movement time, and that's just the way it is. And so there's a lot of opportunities where it's like it's just how the dice fall, and there's nothing nefarious about it. It's just I don't know. I don't. The other thing is, at the end of the day, you don't know the full context of the decision making. It could be something nefarious. Probably not. It's probably not.
Hoping for, the one thing I am hoping for. Jill was the one who said during one of the video, the Vidoc things, that, or it was a roundtable, the writers' roundtable, that she had stories upon stories about some of the Iron Lords that are just her own personal. And it's just like, I know they're not canon, but I want those. I want to know what Aphrodite did, because if Aphrodite throws Saladin, obviously, into a tank or anything like that, what else did she do? Like, I want to know about these characters. And I'm a little sad that we may never ever see those now. And I'm sure
the wonderful thing about that is that if it was written and given to Bungie, they have those writings.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll actually be great in that respect for us. Bungie can still go back and play with them. They can still look at them, so on.
We don't know if she ever wrote those down.
No, I gotta say that's part of the problem besides.
Yeah.
And if not, then it comes down to the stories that may be better left never told, because that comes down to another portion of this that we haven't really discussed yet. Creative direction. If creative direction is not meshing or going along with each other, then at that point it is, especially in something that goes along with creativity, probably better to cut ties in that respect. Bungie's in the unique situation that they kind of get it. You have to have a live team and a launch team for their base title and their extended titles, and then also for newer content that's released over the course of time. One thing that I don't think is necessarily hidden in this respect is the fact that the live team and the launch teams have never necessarily seen eye to eye. This is evident in terms of the stuff that several journalists have actually pulled up. But even then, if we take that stuff out of the boat, or out of the mix rather, we have one very obvious trait and factor. Look at Forsaken versus how Destiny 2's main campaign released. There was an obvious difference in terms of how things were and are handled. So I continue to look at that as a general piecing to say this is what caused us to be in different circumstances with the game, or why certain individuals are also under certain different feelings over the course of time. So I'm not bothered by it at all. If it is just a creative direction thing and it's not meant as any ill will towards any of them, then in some regards we end up getting the direction and the whole idea and piece of what perhaps the minds over at Bungie that are very passionate about the direction of the project are going to be unhindered and unfiltered at this point. Yes, it sucks to end up losing certain members that have been around for a very long time, but
Right.
I don't see it as a bad thing if it's going to be better for everybody involved.
Oh, yeah. It's just interesting because so often when you see people leaving, you automatically assume that it was not their decision.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Especially with like corporations in America and whatnot, absolutely. And it comes down to, well, why didn't you keep these people happy? Well, you end up having all the shakeups and changes that have happened with Bungie as a whole over the course of time. It's not the same company. And further, for that point as well, Destiny is not Halo.
No.
The amount of people that continue to want to take it in that direction, I think it's doing it a very a large disservice by continuing to treat it like Halo. So I am not worried about this. If there are people that feel that they had a better indication for Destiny and suddenly it wasn't going the way they expected it to, and they had to double back on some things, like, I get it. It sucks. It always hurts, especially in a creative mannerism, when you end up having to go backwards in a lot of things. But on pieces of writing where it was evident and obvious, if we're talking about like Jill especially, Jill had I don't know necessarily what I mean more the writing team, not Jill. The writing team seemed to be going more this direction of humor, and definitely far from like how Destiny 1 even was writing itself.
Not as dark.
Yeah, and then as soon as we went back to Grimdark, everybody was like, oh my god, this is what we wanted, this is amazing. So the community has kind of talked and spoken about where they want to go. I think just overall there is nothing bad about this in my mind, honestly. No.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is that, and I think you kind of said this too, Beard, but to reiterate, at the end of the day, it's business. It's not, I mean, and I know a lot of, I mean, we're kind of in that weird position too, is that a lot of our time is spent in a passionate, in a passion sense with Destiny. So it's, for us, it's very easy to, this is what we love and this is what you should love and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, and at the end of the day though, you have to remember that the people who are, whose jobs, and I'm going to iterate that again, whose jobs are the creation of this event, they are passionate about it, but at the end of the day too, it is a job. And, a chat, I chat right now is going, talking about that. It's like, they have careers, and part of the career is, finding that next big opportunity. And in just the same way that any of us would, feel the same way, if an opportunity arises, you seize it. You don't just sit there and look at it and be like, well, I really like this. I just, and that's ultimately, I think that's kind of what you're saying too. And that's ultimately why I'm not like, I'm right there with you. It sucks. I'm sad to see him leave, but I really can't wait to see what they have to do next. And I hope that I really hope the best. I hope that we will get to see what they do next, because if their work with Destiny has been any indication, it's going to be amazing. And I think that's honestly, that's my approach. I think that you can have both things. You can have people being happy with their career, and then Bungie's not gonna sink. Like I don't get that whole. I don't understand that mentality.
No, I don't get it either. I never really have. And I mean, it's the same inkling too. Like, if Bungie was not making, like, the collective community of Bungie was no longer making them happy, then it's just as healthy for them to move on.
Oh, 100%, 100, and both ways, right? Both ways. Because from a business point of view, you don't want an unhappy employee. No. Like, as much as you don't want the employee unhappy, you also, that's bad for the business community that you have, the family there. And so, yes. Yep. It's a very it's the mature decision to do, is the thing too. Yeah. But
well, and nobody seems to be very mean-spirited about it so far. I mean, we don't know.
Well, and that's the other
doors, obviously.
Right. Well, yeah, and you're never. I mean, like we were kind of saying earlier too. You're never going to know the full context. I mean, they're whatever. And I mean, and to that point, it's not really. We don't really need to know the full context. It's not really our business. Nope. But the other thing that actually that comment brings to mind is that they had made. One of the devs had made a comment, because there was a lot of times that they were going around, people were bashing one dev over the other. And it's like, you guys realize that we're all like best friends. Like, we all are still really friendly with each other. Like, and that's the thing at the end of the day that you also have to keep in mind, is that these guys and gals, these people, they're not, it's not like, oh, you work at Ubisoft, I can't talk to you. That's a very high school mentality, cliquish mentality, and that's just not the way things are at all.
Yeah, end of the day, video game industry in general all crunches together.
Yeah, it really does.
There's a reason why it's really hard to break into the industry. It's who you know half the time more so.
Oh yeah, well, and that's not. I mean, to be fair, that's also not just game development. That's any industry.
Pretty much everything.
So, but yeah, so I mean, yeah, I know that's not a lot of lore, but to kind of get us back on the lore track, Green, I know you had a contentious discussion today.
Oh my god! Yesterday. Question of the week.
Better.
Oh my gosh! So, talk about writing that makes people have intense conversations. I asked the question, now that we are ways into the season of the Drifter, what are your feelings on the Warlock Aunor? And that
there are two types of people.
Oh my gosh. I had over 80 notifications. Not all of them were comments, but 80 notifications on this guy. And so it's like, holy crap, you guys. Lots of people were very passionate about it, particularly two people who, one I know is a listener, one I know is just a lore enthusiast in general. And it was interesting to watch their conversation back and forth. But Dan Ritchie said, well, okay, so we'll go into the statistics first and then go into the responses. But I gave the options of feelings on Aunor being boo, meh, but I respect her, she was right, or love her. So I gave you 4 options, kind of a 1 through 4, all the way from hate kind of sort of thing up to really, really like. And it was really stinking close. We were at 41% at meh, but I respect her, 40% boo, 12% she was right, and 7% love her, which is interesting to see because there were people who, even in the comments, who had chosen to follow the Vanguard that didn't like, once they read the story, didn't enjoy the aspect of Aunor. That being said, there are also people who are very passionate about being on Aunor's side. And it's more, and there's one point in particular I want to bring up and ask you guys. But going to some responses, Dan Ritchie says, I would have voted meh, but honestly, I don't respect her. Her whole approach seems like several steps more severe than it needed to be at every opportunity. I'm also still not sure why she was even doing what she was. Sure, she doesn't trust the Vanguard with respects to the Drifter, but why not? What was she honestly hoping to achieve on a big picture level? Or is it as simple as previously stated? She just doesn't trust the Vanguard with the Drifter. So, first part with that one. We got some more. Well, go for it, Blue.
I mean, she's doing what she's doing because, I don't know, the Vanguard freaking told her to. So, sorry, but no, that's not at all the reason. In the narrative preview, it's said that Ikora asked her to do this. Like,
that also being said, in Stolen Intelligence, Ikora was also saying that she did do some things a little bit beyond.
Right?
Beyond
no, she did. She did. I'm not saying that she didn't go above and beyond, but to say just carte blanche that she was doing it because she disrespects the Vanguard and that the Vanguard was not trustworthy. I'm sorry, but that's completely and utterly wrong. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not at all the situation. The situation is that the Praxic Order is basically, and Beard, I think you had mentioned this too, the Praxic Order is basically the Vanguard's like special forces as far as investigations go. Like, By the way,
they're all warlocks.
They are.
Like to say.
Oh, I mean, right. No, they are. Unlike the Hidden, which is another secret community that the Vanguard oversees. I mean, right. The Vanguard, here's the thing, is like, I get the want to polarize people and polarize situations. Mm-hmm. But to simplify it that much is doing a large disservice to all sides. And again, in the narrative previews that we had leading up, you see multiple instances in which Ikora and Aunor are both discussing, and Aunor, to your point, Green, Aunor doesn't really necessarily hold the same level of deference that one might expect, but that also is called out as being part of the reason that Ikora kind of trusts her, is because she's not going to just be like, yes, ma'am. She's going to actually dig into it and look at the situation, which, if you read the full book of the Warlock Aunor, is exactly what she does. as soon as new information is presented, she reacts to that information logically and accordingly to the nature of that information. But the thing is that from the very beginning, she was actually researching Cade's death. She wasn't looking into the Drifter. And it was in the narrative preview that we get the Drifter kind of inserted himself into an investigation. She did already have opinions about it, but I look at the tower. Who doesn't have opinions about things that are going on there? That's not anything unique to her. And Ikora, I believe it was the third one, which is the job, basically makes the comment when the Drifter sneaks in. So the Drifter sneaks into the Praxic research facility to spy on them, and they basically are like, who does he think that he's fooling? They know what he's doing. Like they're all keeping tabs on him. Now, the disagreement between Aunor and the Vanguard is I mean, we're going to definitely get into that, because that ties into more of like the Praxic mentality, and that's not unique necessarily to Aunor, but it is it's a very large part of her personality, and I completely agree that she went beyond what was maybe intended, but I can see logically why she did what she did.
I do have another response that is going to argue the opposite point.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Most people on Twitter have made it very clear that I'm in the minority for my views of her.
Oh, no. I meant like in general, like instead of being against Aunor, there's another one that I have that is more I guess pragmatic when it comes to her role. And the responses of the community to that role, which I think is another interesting topic we should sort of dive into as well. And it's from Little She-Bear. And it was her first major response that she posted, which was, people see her as an arrogant and closed-minded, but I don't see that at all. I see a hard-nosed skeptic who won't just take the Vanguard's word about the Drifter and Gambit until she sees evidence for herself. Besides, someone who was closed-minded wouldn't admit to being wrong. She's tough. She's not polite, but she hunts down Dredgens as her day job. She has to be tough. There's nothing wrong with that. I find it kind of sad that a cool female space cop is looked down upon because she doesn't smile enough, and I constantly see her criticized for things that she never did. People took a stance against her right from the start because she accused the Guardian of being Cade's murderer. She did no such thing, but it was repeated so often people started to believe it. Your friend Aunor shot up a city block. It doesn't mean she killed civilians, but I hear that repeated over and over as truth. If you read the lore from her point of view, Ikora commends her for the fact that there were no casualties. I wonder if she'd be seen as more sympathetic if she were voiced and rendered like Drifter and Orin are.
Yes.
I get why she wasn't. Actors are expensive, but it means she gets the short end of the popularity stick. I think she's great. I find the hate kind of baffling. So, comments,
just to set the record straight on this one, quite frankly, if it was a male, I would have the same kind of derivation towards them. So I want to get that out there right now.
And on the flip side, Beard, I would have the same amount of respect. Sorry,
yeah,
I couldn't resist. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just a matter like this is not a matter of like male female. Just to get that out of there, like right away.
Well,
because I feel like that was a portion of that reply,
right? And I think it's important too is that it's not our portion, right? No. We can't speak for the internet as a whole because everyone knows the internet has its own not nice things to say. But I know what I agree wholeheartedly with what Beard's saying, and I think that's very important for our conversation here tonight. We as a group, us, and as far as I can see, everyone inside the FFC community, that actually hasn't been brought, like, that's not even been part of the conversation. Like, the biggest part of the conversation of her gender was basically, who is Aunor? Oh, she's a human female warlock. Okay, moving on. Like, so yeah, sorry, Beard, go for it.
That's okay. My major thing, if nothing else, is that as a warlock, I found her general perceptions to be very different, I guess, than what I was kind of anticipating of another warlock within the realm. Or I guess I should say I'm used to seeing warlocks written in a perspective and mannerism And to see the way that she was written was kind of shocking, which I think kind of threw me off to begin with her, which also made me kind of distrust her a small bit. Granted, I had my major reasons for not trusting the Vanguard, which is what more so Bungie was effectively kind of making this more to be, that you're with the Vanguard or you're with Drifter. I didn't really placate it or take it as being with Aunor. I took it more as the larger field, the larger game of who are you with? Are you with the counter forces? Are you with the counter terrorists, or are you with the terrorists? And are terrorists going to win? If we want to go with CSGO terminology, right? Or is it the idea of, do you want a little bit more freedom than typical, or do you want to continue to operate within the general order and spectrum of things? Having, I think, continued to also have read a lot of the lore that we now have, I'm even more so okay with my decision. But if I continue with the ideas and spectrum of Aunor as a whole, I think I still would have respect for her as like somebody that sees the facts, sees the evidence, and changes with time, which is, I think, very important to showcase for her general perceptions or general pieces as a character, which is very important to bring up. And I would say that of any character, because we even see the same thing with another couple of warlocks. We see the same thing with Ikora, and we see the same thing with Osiris in a way. Both of them kind of stand to change their overall viewpoints very nicely, very evenly.
Right.
It may take convincing, but that is the thing about any warlock mind in a lot of rights. If you are stuck on seeing the world in a way, then you see a hypothesis and you test it against that crucible of evidence.
Here's a question for you.
Good job, Tyra.
Yeah. Question about, there was another response, D&D reference response, where he was basically saying that I can't remember if he said chaotic good. I think that is what he mentioned. Would you consider Aunor chaotic good, or I would consider her lawful good in a lot of ways, because
I would consider she has her chaotic because she would have ran in there without even causing problems for except as a whole.
She's got her own set of like ideals that she's following so stinking strongly, which, granted, that is the Praxic order in general.
Right,
they are very adamant about
that's
what
why
they're believing in.
I would almost, I'd almost say lawful neutral.
Yeah, okay. I would
I don't chaotic. I don't
neutral. Yeah.
I don't think. I definitely don't think she's chaotic. But that's also given my understanding of my interpretation of that system. So
right.
Well, this is why I would say either neutral good or chaotic or lawful. Chaotic law. Good grief if I could figure this out.
Chaotic lawful.
Chaotic good. Or lawful neutral. They kind of, to me, have always kind of extended the kind of shown themselves in the same way and perspectives.
Yeah, they kind of do.
I would say that the line between them is very thin, but what would make her, I think, more chaotic good would stem from the fact that she is so interested in her general doctrine and general beliefs that she carries them out to an absolute T, no matter what those circumstances may be.
Very lawful to me.
But see, yeah, and I was.
But that's the thing. Lawful versus chaotic comes down to how you take care of it. Are you going to rend a city block, or are you going to run in and try to take care of those situations?
She evacuated the city block too.
But where is the current state of the city as it is?
Okay, but hang on.
I'm looking at it from the perspective that they are rebuilding, that they are trying to bring themselves back up from the ground, and by rending a city block like that, you're not really helping with the rebuilding.
But you're associating. So hang on. This is a common argument that I have with a lot of D&D players, and this is why I said what I said about my understanding of the alignment system. Because if you read the text of the definition of the lawful, it's not adherence to a city law code or a law code of anything. It's adherence to a set of doctrine. That's why in D&D you often have monks be considered, they have to be lawful, even if they are not following the quoted, legal system of a given country. They're following to the T the doctrine of their particular order, which, I mean, that's exactly what she's doing. She's following the doctrine of the Praxic Order to the T. Now, the Praxic Order, that does not mean that she's always going to adhere to the good of the city. The tendency of the Praxic Order is protection of humanity against all forms of danger.
It's fight first, research later.
Right, and that's where you have the concept of the pragmatic warlock, the Cormont blade, all those things. But I mean, that's why I said I think she's lawful neutral, because she's definitely, I definitely don't. I mean, okay, let's get this out of the way. She's not lawful, or she's not evil anything.
No.
I mean,
No.
I think all of us will agree 100% on that one. I think the spectrum that we are obviously disagreeing on is the chaotic lawful spectrum, because I think we're both kind of in agreement that she is kind of neutral. I really, I mean, like, because
well, that's why I would argue it, because she wants to push to get the job done,
right,
whatever the means may be. So,
but she also does adhere to the Praxic doctrine. Like,
we don't know what the Praxic doctrine is.
We know the one part of the creed from the darkness card.
Which I will give you that piece, but like, we don't know necessarily what they end up falling into. That would be my ultimate back catalog to that. Until I see like a full doctrine space given to me, I can't say one way or another what their necessary tenets
well, that's
are.
Fair. Yeah, I mean,
That's
fair.
At that point, that's arguing, more
yeah.
semantics.
Well, and that's
really
yeah,
don't
that's
have
what
answers
that
for.
was last week too. It's like, can we get this
really.
in writing, please?
Yeah.
I mean, God, man, that's exactly. I mean, and I think, but I mean, as far as like her personality goes, she strikes me much more as like as a monk type character.
Yeah.
If you're gonna talk in terms of D&D, and the way that I've always interpreted that definitely, and this is obviously my interpretation of the alignment system, but like the way that it's always kind of struck me is that the lawful doesn't mean to the legal system of X country. It means to your own internal law. Basically, unto yourself be true. And Aunor definitely, in my opinion, definitely showcases that. She adheres to that very strongly, I would argue.
I mean, it's like there's this theme that's going on right now or something about this line between light and dark being kind of thin.
They might be
like
pushing that a bit.
That whole idea. Yeah, I don't know. It's like there's this theme that's being presented to us. I don't know, guys. I don't know.
So are those the big responses, Green?
Yeah, I mean, I have two more, but they're less contentious, I guess, than the other two. There were quite a few responses, and all of them were really interesting and great to read. But I wanted to grab these two in particular because I knew they would be good starters for a debate, a good thread. And that's what I'm loving about putting these questions of the week, is getting that conversation started. Because yes, it is contentious. People have their sides, whether it's founded or not. A lot of people tend to be black and white, and I think that's really interesting. And what we're going to get into, I'm sure, in this episode is that Aunor is not a black and white person as much as she comes across to be.
Far from. And I would quite frankly say that anybody that thinks that she is black and white hasn't read anything about her.
Exactly.
Which, granted, unfortunately, is about the only true measure that you get from her character description, which I will agree with on that second quotation especially. I think if she was given some measure in game, or a voice actor, etc., to showcase how her character is, it may be a little different for her. But because we're getting this different perception, if you will, as Aunor is the written in lore person, and there's not much we can get from that, I do think that does a definite disservice to her character, to the general player base. I would say for the lore enthusiasts and theorists as ourselves, no, not so much.
I would also say, if you think that she's entirely good, I think that you are delusional, personally. Because she's done some things.
She's not your just goody two shoes warlock here, or goody two shoes guardian at all.
I mean, we learned that in Stolen Intelligences, at least.
I'm going to say with the fact that she actually leaked something, period. Yeah, just a little bit.
Anyway, I think we should move on past the community question of the week.
Okay.
Blue.
All right, so this week, you know what? I think, I'm trying to think here. Lost Lore, I think we kind of actually touched on it a bit. I was going to discuss the idea of evolution of a character's views in regards to Aunor and the Praxics, and then also Drifter himself. And and I think we already did, actually. I think that was a large part of what I know Beard and I have had this conversation off and on. I know Green and I have had this conversation off and on. I think we probably hit that deceased horse pretty frequently on that one.
I mean, as a whole, I really think that's just Season of the Drifter at its heart. Like, that's realistically, I think the whole catalog and story that we're kind of talking about as we go along with the thread of Season of a Drifter is just how that character manifests, changes, etc.
Well, and I think the other thing that, I do, and I think the other thing that we've seen with the Black Armory. Now we have the Season of the Drifter. Next up is going to be the Season of Opulence, which I know, Beard, you've made a comment about that, about being
yes, I'm so
callous.
Looking forward to that.
Well, but I mean, they've surprised us. I mean, they could make you be at least a little bit less hostile towards Callus. I mean, it's possible.
If they make me like possible. Him, that would be amazing.
You don't want to
do you
like
believe
the
in
little
miracles, Beard?
I'm sitting here thinking, you don't want to like the baby from Dinosaurs, that TV show back in the day?
I'm the baby!
Ma'am, there are several things I would call Callus. That is not one of them.
He looks like him.
He does look like him. I'm the baby! Gotta love me!
Space rhinos seem to fit that bill, yes. I'll go along with that.
Oh, man. Well, but what I was going to kind of mention, too, is that I think what we're seeing, again, and Beard, you and I made this comment, I think, last week, was, Destiny 1 was all about building the universe with broad strokes. What I think we're seeing, especially kind of a doubling down of in Destiny 2, is populating that world. We've had the world building game. We've had the world building series that was Destiny 1 and the majority of its DLCs, really. And now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of, okay, this is the world, but who's actually in the world? What's actually happening in this place? And correct. I think this is where you're going to see a lot more of these types of entries where it's like, hey, this is the story of, this random space cop and, this, space cowboy or, whatever is going on. And that's really, honestly, trucker. That's what we have seen. Space trucker. Does he drive a wind? Never mind. Anyways, and so I'm really excited to see where this is going, because as we get more focused in on these particular characters, we start also getting a little bit more nuanced in the way things work. We start getting upsets and starting to get things that break the mold. And that's always the fun part. But yeah, so I think, again, I think with the community question piece, I think we did get into this pretty well. So I'm completely comfortable if you guys are to jump right into just like a summary of the lore book and then dive, directly into it, knowing we kind of are running a little behind on it.
Sure.
Does that sound good for you? Okay.
Yeah.
So real quick, just a real basic overview of who in the 9 blankety blanks is Aunor. Aunor is one of the Hidden, which is a covert group of guardians who gather sensitive intelligence. This is from A Message of Solidarity, and they go on and says, you've heard the rumors that they've embedded on just about every active Vanguard front, including the Tower. What we also know from lore is that Aunor is a human female warlock. Her preferred subclass appears to be Stormcaller. It's definitely kind of an Arc-esque subclass. And from her ghost goes by the nickname, and I'm going to butcher this name, the nickname Bighari, which is short for Bahagari, and portrays a female personality. She is one of the more noted members of the Praxic Order, and basically we see this in her appearance both before the consensus itself as a report, like she reports to the consensus of the Praxic's findings, and also the overtly casual tone that she takes with Ikora throughout her interactions within the narrative previews. Also, as mentioned in kind of our chat earlier, is that Ikora actually does have a sense of protectiveness around Aunor, because within the stolen intelligence, we find out that those records were actually dispersed by Aunor against, I guess it was very Snowden-like of her to put those records out. I'll just put it that way. I think that's a fair parallel to draw.
That's the best way, I think, to put it.
And when Zavala made a comment, Ikora actually kind of defended Aunor in a way of saying that, basically, well, what reason have we given them to trust us? So she actually kind of took Anor's side, which is, again, we kind of were talking about that earlier as well. But this particular lore book is actually going to focus in on the events around the whole allegiance quest and kind of the underlying tension, if you would, between the two sides that we chose there. So we start off, and basically I think everyone got the first 4 or 5 letters, and then
we got the messages from her. So,
but did you get all the messages if you chose Drifter? Because I don't think I know you didn't get the full lore book.
Let me open up actually my lore so that I can tell you exactly.
I'm going to say I can tell you exactly what it was that I ended up getting.
Let's see here.
I have the first 5, and that is it.
That is also what I have.
Yeah.
Messages from Aunor 5 is the last card that you get.
Okay. Real quick.
Which are mostly the cards that talk about convincing you not to trust Drifter.
Yeah, they're kind of the intro to her.
Unfortunately, the ones that don't necessarily paint her in the best of light.
Right, yeah. And I think that was actually, I obviously it's by design, but I think that was more also to kind of, I don't know. I kind of feel like it was a loaded question type situation too. Like, I think most people kind of knew going into it what side they were going to go on to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I know I did. I know
Beard. I did.
I know Beard did, and I'm pretty sure I know Green did.
My whole clan basically did.
Right. I'm not.
There's only one person in our clan that did not choose Drifter.
Oh, who's my new best friend?
Lux. Lux also refuses to wear his Dredgen title even though he has it.
Good man. But no, oh, that's funny. That makes me happy. But no, so like, who Aunor is a big part of this whole debate. And because it's not just, and we mentioned this also earlier, it's not just who she is at the start, it's also who she becomes. Which is a really, really cool thing if you are like my two co-hosts here and chose the Gambit or the Drifter side. I would really encourage you to go to Ishtar if you haven't already and read the full book, because there's not just the messages. There's also surveillance feeds of what she was seeing. There is surveillance feeds of the whole district situation where she quote unquote gunned down an entire city block, which is just not true. She destroyed a city block, but it was because her ghost was kidnapped and she was getting her back. So there's like, even, and I hesitate to even say that Drifter was fully lying, because I don't know if Drifter even really knew the full context of what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, he had seen that a city block got
pulverized. Right, yeah.
So
and
he made
an assumption.
He made the assumption.
Right.
Absolutely.
And the other cool thing.
Perspective.
Yeah. What? Oh man, it was like something we spent a ton of time last week talking about.
I mean, we're going to have a ton of time talking about it this week because of Nora's perspective on the whole thing as well.
Right. Yeah, really. And but the other cool thing that I wanted to bring out on that particular entry is the new technology that we got introduced to. Did anyone else catch that? Because I want those. Those things sound cool. Yeah. The little rubber band guns.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh hey, ghosts are causing problems. Rubber band them. Like, what? You can do that?
It's effectively it's
a restraining bolt on them. Like, it's amazing.
It's like using twist ties for SWAT, basically.
Oh,
yeah.
Gosh.
I like restraining bolt better, but yeah, it's
muzzling them.
Well, I mean, yeah, because it basically, and we see kind of maybe a nod of it to that in the what is it, The Man with No Name, A Man with No Name, when Ephrodite makes the comment about the ghost. Like, you kind of get a sense that she lets the ghost go, but there's also a sense of maybe something going on there. But I don't know if I read that way because I had just read the rubber band guns in Anor's book. Really? So I'm like, maybe I could be biased in my reading of that. But so there's apparently there's technology that the Praxics have that has been stolen by the group of Dredgens, but that actually incapacitates a ghost and denies its abilities as far as resurrection and pretty much it sounds like almost everything. Except for communication. It can still communicate, which was
well, we don't necessarily know about that one, actually.
Well, no, because she communicated with Bighari to find out which building.
After she confirmed that
she was
the thing, though.
Yeah, okay, that's right. Okay, yeah, I forgot about the hacking. Yeah,
that I think was like one of the cutest pieces about it.
Oh my gosh,
fact that she was like hacked. She had hacked her own rubber bands. I was like, you're kidding me. That's adorable.
But I thought that was a really cool kind of little development that I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of people mention it.
No. Right. Well, it's to show too that we also have some technology in a way that allows us to that allows us to also cut light off from ourselves in a way. It's not as malicious. It's temporary, it seems, until the restraints are basically peeled off. Sure, but it also showcase that we have the capability.
Yeah, it basically also doubles down on the fact of what happened with the vanilla campaign is not necessarily completely unheard of.
No.
Which I actually liked as well, because it was like, oh, okay, so this is not some what moment. This is more of
We also don't necessarily know when those things were put into place either. I've had that discussion with some people, if it was something that we had devised after the Red War was over.
And that's true, reverse engineered it based off that. Yeah, that's true.
Something similar to it, yeah.
But yeah, so basically that's really Aunor in a nutshell. Is she's a member of the Hidden. She's a part of the Praxic Order. She seems to be a pretty high position in, not necessarily I think she's kind of high, and she's not up to the second in second in command. She's not Chalco, but she's up there. I get the feeling she's up there.
She's certainly trusted by Ikora.
Right, yeah. And
was trusted by Ikora.
I think she still is.
I think she still is.
I think that's actually what makes her so awesome in a way, is that she's playing both of these sides, respected by both of these sides. She's almost like what was it? Was it Ramos in Al Sector, who was
Corey?
Yeah, who was playing back and forth between Al Sector and then reporting back to Ikora. I always thought that was pretty cool,
because he was the liaison too. I think he also was. He was also. Never mind. He was also doing other things with Ikora.
Right.
Implied. I know. My gosh. I love T for teen. So yeah, Aunor is basically the entirety of this book is her making the case for you to ally yourself with the Vanguard. Once you choose that, which I think, like you guys said, you basically get the first 5 messages. Everyone gets the first 5 messages. At that point, that's when the choice is made between the Vanguard and the Drifter. If you choose the Drifter, you get basically the same quest, but you don't get the remaining entries of this lore book. If you choose the Vanguard, you get there's still repercussion choice effects. Basically, if you chose the Drifter, I think the Drifter gives you a package every week out of appreciation. Yeah. If you choose the Vanguard, you get it from Ikora.
You get a package from Drifter every week that contains some of the...
Don't read too much into that, kids.
What do they contain? They contain the charms, essentially. The coins. What are they called? Pulling them up.
The tokens?
Yeah, you get you get the scents. That's what they're called. The Sentry Scent and the Reaper Scents.
I got
you.
So
you get, I think, something else with it besides. You get all 4 scents and something else.
Because I know with Ikora you get the whatever the cores are, and then Vanguard
Masterwork
token.
Cores.
Are they Masterwork Cores?
Enhancement Cores.
Cores, yeah. Whatever the little glowy crystals that everyone was losing their minds over.
We'll call them still the pain in the neck that doesn't deserve
enhancement cores. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you get a handful of those, and then Vanguard tokens, and then usually a piece of armor. And so but that's after you've made the choice. So you make the choice, and like I said, basically the quest is really the same. Like the steps are the same. The flavor text and the dialogue that you get are obviously very different because in the quest, when you choose the Drifter, obviously the Drifter is narrating. When you choose the Vanguard, I'm trying to remember. I know that the quest that you hunt down the tapes and stuff, you get all of the dialogue from Drifter because he's recorded himself.
Right.
I want to say there was 1 or 2 lines from Aunor, but most of it was just unlocking more of the lore entries. There wasn't a lot in regards to dialogue. There was a lot of like running back and forth because you are the one who bugs the annex to basically recover the transcripts that you later will get sent copies of. You're the one who has to find the hidden agent inside the tower and send a message via a console within the hangar. It's really actually I liked how they used different areas of the tower to kind of further the story. Because it really kind of did actually give a sense of like, oh no, these are actually things that are going on like behind the scenes within the hidden or within the Vanguard. It kind of played up on that. It played up on the fact that there are humans involved in this. There are people that you don't see necessarily at all times that are doing things behind the scenes. I thought that was really cool. I thought that kind of gave you more of a 3-dimensional feel, I guess, to the tower. It wasn't as 2-dimensional, and it actually gave me an excuse to go back to the hangar, which who does that? Besides
Zur being there.
Yeah, Dino in chat. Yeah, I planted the same bug in the just planted the bug in the same place 3 times. I totally
was there a bug with that?
No, like literally there's 2 points inside the annex that you could you could dump the bug, and there was like you could just sit in the same place and go pop pop pop, and that was it. Like you didn't have to like move between the 2 spaces. It was I thought that was hilarious as well. But yeah, so basically when I made the comment about Aunor being kind of the special forces investigator to both the hidden and to the Praxic, which really is, she kind of seems to be a dual role in there. We see that really in a couple of the entries that you get if you choose the Vanguard, and those are the ones that are really kind of, in my mind, telling of her personality more so than the messages, which is what Beard, I think, was kind of saying earlier. And those are District 125 and the salt mines. District 125, I think, is extremely telling of her character, as are the narrative previews that also are a big component in kind of probably my aggressive response about the claim that she's working against the Vanguard or against the wishes of the Vanguard, because the narrative previews kind of point that completely to a different degree. District 125, however, is the detailed account of what exactly was going on with the whole city block situation. And this is where you kind of get the sense that Aunor is kind of a bad Like, I mean, she also really likes her ghost, which I think Dino was making a comment about that earlier. Is like, you know, Drifter's the one that's making a comment about her shooting up a city block to get to do all this stuff, but we also find out how Drifter feels about his ghost. And that kind of also paints his response to what she's doing here, because she's doing what she's doing in District 125 to get her ghost back. Her ghosts have been stolen. Her ghosts have been restrained and against her will. And so she was trying to rescue her ghost. Whereas the Drifter, who doesn't trust his ghost and, you know, has cannibalized his ghost, there's no trust there. Whereas there's a completely different relationship between Aunor and Bigari than between Drifter and Ghost. So there's also that bias perception as well that you have to take into account when you start hearing the relaying of the situation from both sides. So I don't know. This is a pretty long one, and I don't really necessarily want to read the whole thing. The highlights, really, like we had kind of mentioned, is the introduction to the concept of the praxic tech of the restraints. Then the fact that she commandeers a maglev train, and basically makes sure that all the civilians are gone. Like she gets all of them out of that area. She gets them all off the train. And I'll read this little thing. She said she had never driven a maglev train before. She liked the feel of power in the front car, watching the world hurtle past. The train was empty. She had ordered all the passengers and the conductor off before she'd requisitioned it. You could convince people to do almost anything with a cormorant seal. The turn came rushing up, and she keyed a control on her wrist. A series of proximity mines on the rail and the barrier that supported it exploded, and the train hurtled through the smoke and fire down onto a rust-red warehouse building far below. And you actually get to see a little bit of what it's like for a guardian after they've died before they get resurrected by a ghost. It mentions that she can see everything that Bigari can see, even in death. But I don't know if she's talking about, like, I think she's talking about after she's died. Is that how you guys read that as well?
That's how I had read it. Yeah.
Okay.
That she knew about it when she was basically Ra's al Ghul into the thing.
I'm sorry. That's inaccurate. I don't have to save you. I don't need you. Go away.
Yeah, basically.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. But basically what this also displays is that Aunor is not just an investigator. She is actually someone who is, and that was the other thing, is like, while you guys were talking about you wish that she had been voiced and all that stuff, all I can think of is that on part of the armor, you get the sense that Aunor is actually got a kind of a weird sense of humor. She hates paperwork. Like, hates like, I don't think the word is strong enough. She hates paperwork. It's amazing how much she dislikes just doing paperwork. And it's because it gets her out of the field. She's not allowed to do field work until she does her paperwork. And it's like listening to a kid who wants to go outside and play, but you make them have to do their homework first. Oh my gosh, it's the funniest thing. And that's where I know Chad had mentioned the comment about in District 125, it's mentioned that she's very solar aligned. In the entries that she is talking to Bigari kind of privately, and she's mentioning all the paperwork that she has to do, she actually short circuits a lot of the electronics in her apartment, and that's where I was kind of picking up on that she likes the art class, is because
also the notion of ozone and everything. She started to focus. There's actually a couple more indicators of her being a stormcaller, which, for the instance of balance, and
I was about to say, going back to that settled balance thing.
Yep, I'm gonna say she actually walks that line a little bit, which I appreciate quite a bit for her. Overall character.
I really, really like the just absolute, not just doubling, tripling, but like almost quadrupling down that they have on her hatred of bookwork. Like, it's
I'm gonna say, counter to another warlock of any kind, which is just hysterical.
Well, but I think that's also the Praxics, right? I get that
right.
That's the Praxics, is that, that's the whole thing about why are they going to philosophically argue when they can just palm it.
Right.
But as far as the salt mines, what this actually shows is an interaction between Aunor and Shin. And she actually talks Shin down from shooting 2 new dredgens. And see, this is where, Beard, you and I had kind of mentioned this also. I'm not sure what's going on, because the introduction to here mentions an ashen silhouette smoldered on the cliffside.
Which is the one you visit when you pick up the thorn pieces.
Right. Well, this is a conversation Beard and I were having last week with the whole thing about Callum. Is what we see in that strike, is that where the actual thing was going on, or was that just a manifestation of our unconscious? Because it is technically within the Ascendant realm.
Right.
Interesting. Huh. So do you think that's where Callum actually got shot? Was on the
I mean, I'll be 100% honest, I don't know.
I mean, there's physical manifestations within both sides.
Right.
But that's a really interesting thought game to play that I think is a little dangerous, personally.
Well, it still comes into this whole wonderful dialogue that we have that's going on right now of time and when Callum was shot and killed, which is extraordinarily vague. And
when did he come back in the system?
Exactly. Well, this assumes that he wouldn't have been on Drifter's ship at the very least, but it does at least call back to this idea of when, either way, when did he come back in after being exiled or pushed away by the shadows, which we false anyway. This is just a tangent and a half. But it is just a further point just to show this discrepancy of time. Aunor herself might have been a Praxic Warlock for a very, very long time previous as well. We don't even know how long in that respect to especially garner her hatred the way that she does of dredgens, almost to the point of what Shin Malfur has been as well. So all of these general pieces seem to clamor at something different. So I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, the other thing is this, Green, you said this is where we find Thorn?
Yeah, it's in the campfire off the
cliff.
in
a cliff above the sun. Okay, yeah, fair
by
enough.
The salt mines.
Yep. Okay, I gotcha.
Because that's where we find the remains of what was a thorn, essentially. And you take it back to Banshee, I think, afterwards, and Banshee gets all verklempt about it.
Oh, God. Poor Banshee.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is also where you get the name of the restraint tech. I completely forgot about this. They are called quitclaim shotguns. I don't know. Is that I took that as being the name of the shotgun that fired the rubber band thing.
How terrifying is that to know that they have guns like that?
Oh, wait, hang on. Maybe they're not. No, quitclaim shotgun is a shotgun from the Curse of Osiris. Okay, so maybe that's a different thing. I want a rubber band gun. I think that sounds amazing. And now all I can think of is Fallout.
Could you imagine doing a strike with somebody and they make you mad and you just pull that out and capture the ghost so they can't finish the strike? I may have been running a strike before the show with somebody who was trying
Green
to
would have totally rubber banded.
I would have rubber banded both of them and just finished the strike by myself. I wear my dredgen title proudly.
Oh man. So yeah, the quitclaim is again it's another shotgun from within Curse of the Osiris. I think Dino, it's a new monarchy from the faction rally. So basically you see Aunor leading a group of various guardians. It sounds like one of them is a Night Stalker because there's a mention of a Void Arrow. And then they capture the guardian, or they capture the ghost, and she faces down Shin, which okay, there's a couple things here that need to be called out with this whole situation. First off, she's facing down Shin. She knows who Shin is, and she's not backing down. Also, Shin has a golden gun the entire conversation, and then walks into the forest with the golden gun still blazing. Like, I'm still a little perplexed by this gun that this guy has. And it's called the ever-burning gun. Like, they call it out as it's like definitely still burning. And at the end, he walks off.
About infernal flames?
Oh my gosh!
I mean, we talked about how Rezel having Thorn, how Thorn acted with him. Why would it be any different for the golden gun to act with Shen?
Well, we start to talk about that in terms of like powers in general. I know this is again tangential from Aunor, but to showcase the power that she's going up against, at least to say how little she actually gave a darn, is pretty amazing. But knowing that like he has these kinds of powers to utilize and to wield, and to know that power in general is just so far and above what we know of other golden gunners in a lot of essences and rights. Like, that should show how deep and powerful his link to it all goes. The same could ultimately be said of Rezel and Azir and Yor. You know, that he was just incredibly good at what he did. Whether that would be for good or ill, which, you know, that's still possibly debatable per this point if you listen to Shin.
I just love the little bit of a spat between them. Yeah. Because, oh my gosh, Shin does not, I mean, neither of them really bandy words, but no. Shin's like, he says, my struggle is older than yours, Warlock Aunor, and it will be here when your Praxic laws are forgotten and the last city is dust. And then but in Anor's defense, she turns around and she says, you and Shax and the Vanguard and all the deal makers are going to get the city killed. And she's actually defending the Dredgens. So I want to also call that out here. Yep. She has a classification for them. She said, so the entire conversation starts with Shin kind of rounding on her and being like, you're interrupting important work. And her response is, stole the words right out of my mouth. And that's where this whole argument about, I just love the argument because it goes down to jurisdiction. This is the federal government versus state government as portrayed in every freaking SVU Law and Order show ever. And Aunor basically says, no, these are third-degree offenders. They're consorting with the darkness on a material level only, collecting and concealing illegal artifacts. We'll rehabilitate and re-educate them if we need to. And then Shin kind of goes back to the whole black and white, power corrupts, blah, 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 which I think is, he's playing the part, as we all have come to find out. But it's also really kind of interesting hearing him say that, knowing what we know about Shin. But then she takes it in a little bit of an interesting turn. She makes the point that you're costing us ghosts. These guardians represent more than potential Dredgens. And I think that also kind of points out the fact that of the multifaceted levels of which Aunor is operating on. Yeah. Because this entire entry and this entire side quest that everyone has been participating in for the most part has always been assumed that it's Vanguard versus Drifter. And everyone forgets that there's a lot more facets in play here. And this is one of them. Shin is another contender for, the support of the Guardian, if you will. And Aunor here is actually, in a way, kind of siding with the Drifter and not the Drifter, but the Dredgens, and protecting them from Shin. The same Dredgens that she is also she's going to arrest them, she's going to detain them and rehabilitate them if they need to. But I think it needs to be called out here and made sure that everyone realizes that she is defending them from being killed. So she's not just this mindless, whatever people have been saying about her, about, she just, she's this bullet trigger hungry, blah, blah, blah. No, she has, and this kind of goes back to my, our conversation about her alignment. she has a code. She does have a code, and her code is, I think it was Black Flag, who made the comment about the Praxics as being like the Judge Dreads, or the judges from the Judge Dredd series. That's really, they kind of, it kind of fits. Like, it kind of does fit. But at the same time, they too had a strict code. Now, you can debate the morality of that code all you want, but for the most part,
who got things done however they wanted to.
No,
but
you guys are going to argue on that back and forth
time.
We
are.
Hey, you want to bring up Judge Dredd
hey.
and the judges? Yes, you better believe I'm going to bring that point up again.
Listen. Dredd got stuff done, and he
I'm not saying Aunor didn't get stuff done either.
He definitely didn't.
Right?
He didn't back down from confronting other judges who were stepping out of line. But again,
doesn't either about other judges that step out of line.
Very true, very true. And I also, to kind of further that, also, I don't think Aunor would balk at doing that to other Praxics that stepped out of line.
No, I don't think so.
And
whatsoever.
I think
that's actually where they kind of like walk that same line.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. I think that's the interesting confluence between all of them, is they are all doing it for the greater good in their own perceptions.
Right.
Well, and I think that's an important part about perception, because we talked about how it was, Drifter versus Vanguard in a lot of rights. I was taking it more as Dredgens versus Vanguard. That's, for me, how I was kind of thinking about it initially. So for how we ended up getting it panned out, or how things ended up going, was, of course, different from that perceived knowledge. But it's the basis and how those characters and sides were operating in a lot of rights that made me think a little bit closer to like Dredgens versus Vanguard.
Yeah, and
which we now know is not even close to the to the right example or idea that we're after here.
Well, it doesn't help that Drifter was kind of like sullying the water with, you get a title, and you get a title, and you get a title.
Yeah.
God, now I have Drifter as Oprah in my head.
Oprah?
Oh my gosh.
Like a really...
and you get a title, and you get a title, and ding, 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 ding.
Now I have Oprah with a goatee beard combo on my head. That is really awkward.
Welcome.
Really awkward.
The other fun thing. And open. The other thing that I want to call out too is, again, with Shin's golden gun, he actually changes it from hand to hand. Like,
yep.
I'm sorry, I keep coming back to that, but it really bugs me that he has a golden gun that lasts this long. Like,
it's almost like they were physical manifestations rather than they were much else.
Well, and given from when he was, that actually does make sense. Like, but it also would argue, does that mean that the light that we have now is diluted a bit?
I would argue to say that it's a completely different golden gun in that regard.
Fair.
If you start talking like the powers and whatnot that Shin himself was using within that card, I would almost say that it's a completely different golden gun in that respect. I would argue to say that is pure, the pure light, or the pure form of the weapon, where we are just using a mimicry of that weapon.
Well, you have to also remember how it's described that the weapon is summoned initially for him.
Yep.
Right. It's unadulterated emotion.
Fury. Yeah, it's just that rage and that passion.
Yep. And what's the entire thing that they highlight throughout all of those cards? It absolutely fits the same bill. So I'm in complete agreement with that. Sorry, guys, because we keep going back and forth on Shin here instead of on. But
he's kind of an important character.
He's kind of an important role at this point within all of this. Like, he's the. Is it that he is the Dredgens truly? Is Drifter the Dredgens truly? Where all of these standpoints kind of are interlocked in how they're perceived and how they handle. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's why it's so important to kind of keep coming back to him.
I'm sorry, chat. Chat's
He
killing
doesn't
me.
know anger management. Oh my god, bro.
Shit is just really angry. That's his secret.
He's a Hulk.
And then Black Flag, he digivolved his golden gun.
Digivolved? I haven't heard about that in forever. Wow.
Y'all are killing me with these references. Yeah, I say something about Batman and suddenly y'all are off on Digimon territory. What is wrong with you all?
Judge Dredd and
Also,
all
absolutely
this stuff.
nothing. Just to keep it.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love it. I love it. So yeah, I mean, again, to kind of go into the narrative previews, really the one that explains where the kind of relationship between Ikora and Aunor come in is the final one, which is the job. And this is taking place in Lab 3, where Aunor is like, or actually Ikora is like, if that idiot doesn't think we don't recognize him, because this was after Drifter had stolen the obsidian mind, and he put the, which makes me think, like, did he get it on backwards? Like, do you think he actually got it on correctly? I mean, like, oh my gosh, I totally could see him doing something wonky.
I mean, I'm just pointing something out here, but him putting on an obsidian mind. 1, where's mine? 2, Shin made that little joke about him not being a warlock, and I'm just sitting here going, oh, really? He's not a warlock, you say? I know he's not a warlock archetype, but it would be funny if he were to, like, fully utilize the light and whatnot, if that's the little hint that they're trying to pass off. I think that would be kind of like a backhand in a way to Shin, like, nah, I'm a warlock. I don't like to say that I am, though, because I don't like this whole light thing, but, you know.
My goodness,
No,
chat is
me?
going... No, sorry, just chat's going crazy about this Pokemon thing now.
Oh.
It's like, oh my god, gotta catch them all, Shadows.
So, but this is also, I think,
All, Shadowmon.
I think this is also where a lot of people's annoyance at Aunor and kind of misunderstanding of Aunor kind of stems from, because this is the job is where she also kind of points out that she's investigating us as potential murderers of Cade, which, I mean, given the way she presents it, it makes sense. She's just making sure that this is what's happening, because again, with the Praxics, their entire focus is the protection of humanity in the last city, right? It's protecting them from threats both domestic and foreign. Really, I mean, if you pardon my stealing of that, and so she points out, and Ikora is like, oh my god, how many times have you done this? How many times have you checked this data? 17 in my off hours. I needed to know if I could trust the Guardian that let Cade die. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it's kind of hard not to read as a direct confrontation. And Ikora kind of points out that, you know, Zavala and her are just as culpable. And Aunor makes the point that she's like, no, we lost Cade on a random Tuesday, and you all just took that Guardian's word for it. One who's had less than a decade of service. You didn't think to ask whether it was a lie. You didn't think it was important to pore over this footage to double check every possible angle. And this kind of, I mean, this is where Ikora, you know, it kind of hits a nerve with Ikora, and you kind of see, you know, basically Ikora loses it a little bit. But then you also get the information that Ikora and the Vanguard gave Aunor Sundance's shell. They gave it to her with the intent of her doing exactly what she's doing right now. And so then she's like, and what have you found? And basically Aunor says nothing. It's basically as the hero surmised. Sundance was murdered by the Barons, then Untitled Chapter. They basically introduced the concept of this single thorn-like bullet, which...
Don't get me started.
I have so many questions about that, but, you know, I have a thought as to why that is important, but I don't know if it's accurate. And Beard, I'll run that by you in just a second. But basically, you know, she makes the point, had they missed the last few months, it would have played out differently. So we have a timing, again, a confirmation of some time has passed. But then Aunor kind of admits, I admit that I see no reason not to believe the official report. And Ikora is like the most reliable guardian I know. And then it goes on, and Ikora says, we need you to leave the Drifter alone. And Aunor responds with, I have the Vanguard's best interest in mind, and now that I know our hero can be trusted, maybe I've found the help I need. And Ikora says, to do what? And her response is, to save you from yourself. It remains my honor to be your hidden, but there are lines I will never cross. Not for you, not for the Order. Do you trust me to do my job? Again, Beard, this is kind of where I'm reading the lawful, neutral piece. And again, Ikora's response here is always, the Vanguard, ask that you do the same. And she responds with always. So, I mean, there's a little bit of and this is before stolen intelligence happens. But so that conversation there is what I think that a lot of people are kind of missing the implications of, because what she's saying, what Aunor is saying, is that her job is to be the one who asks the uncomfortable questions to make sure that what they assume is happening is actually what's happening. And the Vanguard trusts the Praxics to do that. They trust Aunor to be the investigator that is going to be the one that puts them in uncomfortable situations. That's her job, basically. She is I think someone mentioned it in our chat just a second ago, she is the internal affairs, basically, of the Vanguard. And the thing about internal affairs is nobody likes internal affairs. Everyone seems to hate them. But that all being said, they are arguably one of, if not the most important functions in any legal system, because they are the ones,
accountability.
They are the ones that watch the watchers. And I know that's, there you go, Beard. There's a Watchmen reference for you.
I was going to say, who watches the Watchmen?
Who watches the Watchmen? It's IA is what that is their entire function, is to make sure that the people who are administering justice and administering what is right and good are doing just that. And I think that's where she really does, and this kind of branches into the later entries that we see from her side, where she gets this transcript of Drifter talking about things that are kind of identified as explosives being planted around the city. That's kind of a concern, and she reacts accordingly. And then, once they find out that that was just a figure of speech, they back off. Like, there's a lot of development as far as their characters go on both sides that I think, again, to just grossly simplify as, oh, she's a hard-headed lawyer, or she's a hard-headed police officer, and he's the, no good for nothing rogue that everyone loves, or, whatever. I think that does a disservice actually to both sides significantly.
Yep, I agree. It's interesting to see the dynamics, though. It's so easy to get caught up with them. And I think the point that was made earlier, in the fact that we don't have the personal relationship with Aunor, we only see these entries that we seem to have with Drifter, that makes it a little even more difficult to like her character in some respects.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, and that's kind of what chat's going on too, right? Is like, I think a lot of people have emotional connections to their guardians. Understandably, that's our gateway into this world. And so when the Drifter has an approach of acceptance of our guardian without question, a lot of people kind of gravitate towards that. That's something that makes sense to them, because they would surely never let Kate die. Right. Whereas this character, who, as you guys have mentioned, doesn't have a voice line, doesn't have that more human connection. There's just words on a screen. This entire character's purpose initializes from a questioning of our motives. And it's important to remember that information is not widespread. Like, not everyone knows about the intricacies of our relationships with the Vanguard. Not everyone is familiar with the exact details of our history as far as Guardians. They might know the legends. It's implied that there are legends told of our Guardian to the city and to the civilians and other Guardians. But, you have to remember that in the span of what we're looking at, and as we kind of learn more and more, the scope of time keeps increasing. We really are, our Guardian really is just a small blip on this whole radar. And so when you're talking about Cade, who is arguably one of the oldest Guardians, his death being relayed to everyone by a Guardian who at best is maybe 5 or 6 years resurrected, it makes sense why Aunor has these suspicions. And to Anor's credit, as soon as she goes through the record meticulously, she backs off. She's like, no, this is correct. This is the situation as was reported, and I see no reason not to contest it, or I see no reason to contest it.
She's a really good cop.
Yeah, I think, but I think the thing that set a lot of people already at a disservice to her is this particular entry, because it's hard to read that knowing, because again, you have to also remember that she wasn't there. All she has is this recording from Sundance. So she's dealing with incomplete information to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think this is going to be green opinion time, but the thing that set me off most about her is this person randomly messaged me, it seems, and is basically telling me what to believe. That is like probably the worst thing you can do if you want me to believe you on anything. It's just, that's more what set me off with her than anything else. It's just like, don't you tell me what to believe.
Right.
That is not your job.
And I hesitantly question if that might not be something to do with the way that it was rolled out.
I think it was also how, I think it was partially how it's to be written too. Like, she was written to be a character that is gonna be that lawful character that, not necessarily parental, but the cop that's there like, hey, this is what's going on that I see. I don't think you should trust this guy. Don't look at the shady guy around the corner selling little white packets. So I can see why people gravitated towards her, but I can also see why so easily a lot of us went, nope, you're not for me.
I mean, I had plenty of other reasons besides, but yes, I can easily see that.
What are we up to next? We're message 10. Are we up there yet?
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. She was condescending, like Uldren. I don't think she was as condescending, because reading text can be interpreted a lot of ways. So if you get a bad taste in your mouth from the get-go, you're not going to interpret anything she has to say nice. That's just my personal thing on that one, because text is a fickle thing.
I never got the impression that she was condescending with anything that she said. She was very matter-of-fact in how she was saying it. I also think that many took it the Asher Mir approach, where the way that she was talking could be perceived and sort of expected to be in that same sort of mannerisms. I mean, in a lot of rights, Warlock for Warlock, you would expect that they were going to sound exactly the same. Meanwhile, this Warlock, who has paid attention to far too many of them at this point, will tell you that that's never been the case, in my opinion, with her. She has been somebody that will... let's go with the Die Hard reference here. Just the facts, ma'am. That's all that she's really looking for. And if she can get to the bottom of a circumstance, she will do it. That is one reason that I really do impress upon people. Like, read over what she's about, because I think when all is said and done, you'll get to the point where she is able to conform to an opinion and able to conform to the facts that are placed in front of her, but she will still have her, like, the thing in the back that'll always be there, where she may end up saying, like, I told you so, when all is said and done. She is still prideful of her opinions, but she is professional enough in her interrogations and fact-finding to say, no, I can say when I've done enough. Yeah, Black Flag. Ideologically, Aunor is written the way she is at the start to be opposing our Guardian's perceived mindset in a post-Forsaken world. That's a very important point to remember, because as we kind of said towards the top of the show, even from like a development standpoint, from a game standpoint, things have changed and altered quite a bit too. Forsaken has loaded this entirely different line of perspective and ideas under our feet that we have to consider now. So I think that's extremely important to remember for sure. I know every time I go to either write a script or I go to just talk on this show now and again, I have to keep that in mind occasionally. This is not our Rise of Iron Goody Two-Shoes that we're talking about anymore. This is somebody that has now perceived something that they would have rather not have, and it has changed them for better or worse in that regard.
Did we talk about how the tapes that were made, Drifter's tapes, who told Drifter to make those tapes?
No, we have not talked about that. Did you want to speak to that?
I think that's an interesting thing to bring up, because wasn't it Oren who basically made him, or was it Aunor herself? I'm trying to remember.
I mean, Aunor didn't have anything to do with the tapes. She found out about the tapes. She found out about the tapes because of they were trying to prevent the perceived terrorist attack on the tower, and they went to the Spider, who then kind of sold them out to Drifter. Surprise! And then when that's what took you to, I think, Titan, if I remember that correctly. And then you bounced around a little bit there, and then you eventually got to recovering the data, because basically they were data drops for the Guardians who had allied with the Drifter. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you were trying to intercept them, because the Praxics didn't know if that was like dead drops of weapons. Like, they didn't know what they were. Turns out that they were just tapes, and basically as soon as they found the tapes and reviewed the tapes, that's kind of where Aunor kind of gets led into the, oh, okay, this situation's what's actually kind of going on. And it was closer to the end, but that's where you also start really seeing, at least within the entries, you start seeing the transformation from kind of aggressively judgmental to kind of just like, I don't really like you, but I now understand why they don't kick you out. Like, I don't like it, but it makes more sense now. Like, this is more logical now. And I mean, the biggest thing the only complaint that I've seen that I kind of can sympathize with, I mean, I see both sides, but I've seen it said, well, if they had just given her this information up front, if they had just been kind of like the Vanguard had just given the information up front, then this would have been a lot easier for everyone. And it kind of goes back to what you believe as far as the Vanguard and the containment of what they believe to be sensitive information, which ties into the whole stolen intelligence situation, ties into Beard's video about that, the situation with, I think it was Thunderlord. Was that the one that you did that with?
Thunderlord, and
which was an amazing video. I think that's really, I like that. But I mean, it's again, though, I think for me at least, what it was also was a really important reminder that the Vanguard are not perfect. They're doing their best to do things the way they are, but that's where you get the Oxygen SR entry where Zaval's like, we weren't politicians. Like, he's a military tactician. Ikora's a researcher. Like, they're not designed mentally or, anything. They're not prepared for politician positions and stuff like that. That's why they had the speaker and the consensus. Yep. And so now that they're in this weird, like, political vacuum-esque situation, to be fair, they have no idea what they're doing. And now Cade's gone, so the balance is all out of whack. And, that to me, that's where, again, it's kind of the whole situation of, no, they're not perfect, but they are, I really do think they are trying their best. Do they make mistakes? Oh, of course they make mistakes. I would not at all argue that. But that's where you kind of see that whole transformation again for Anor's purpose. You see the transformation from, I'm coming to get you, to, oh, okay, this is what's going on. And this is why we're kind of dealing with you and the Nine and Orin and the whole situation. I mean, to be fair, Aunor is also where we get confirmation of the timeline for Orin.
Yep.
So I mean, she does have some information that seems to be not necessarily widely known. But again, I think that enters into again the conversation of what is sensitive data and what is not, need to know data.
Speaking of Orin as well, I'm wondering if she has some kind of ties to Orin in a way.
Aunor?
Yeah.
Well, I go back and forth on that one too, because the way she mentions it seems very detached.
Right.
But then she does call out the fact, I see what you're...
She does say, is he going to be able to, if he has a way to give Orin back to us? Like, that to me kind of says that they have something in a way, at least like acknowledgeship of who...
Right, because I know I got the feeling
is.
that Ikora had something going on, like at least a familiarity. But yeah, as far as Aunor, I kind of am on the fence with that one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Speaking of the thorn bullet. So I was thinking, we have the situation with Shin and Jaren's ghost, where Jaren's ghost kind of pseudo-adopts Shin. Do you think, this is just me kind of spinfoiling here, do you think that thorn bullet was the reason that our ghost was unable to save Cade?
Yeah, I would largely say yes to that one.
Okay, because I read that thing and I'm like, that's the only reason I can think of that being specifically called out, because we have instances of ghosts being destroyed via just rather mundane means. Like,
well, that really depends. Where I would like to hear your mundane means.
Well, okay, so other weapons like Fellwinter's shotgun. Not mundane necessarily, but it wasn't a weapon of sorrow-esque level gun. But he shotgunned a ghost. Ephrodite's entire thing with the pistol in the World's End.
Yeah.
She threatens ghosts, and if the ghosts were like, "Oh, ha, you don't have a weapon of sorrow," we didn't get that. They kind of seemed like they were actually kind of fearful. And so, it's just, again, one of those things where it's like, I just never assumed that it was a requirement for a weapon of sorrow grade weapon to be necessary to kill a ghost.
I think that was the point they were trying to drive home.
Okay, yeah, and like I said, I'm like, that's the only thing that made sense to me, but I didn't know if there was something I missed.
I do think that it also comes down to the definitive nature and distance and so on. That it was done in a single shot like that, I think, is the call-out that they may be attempting to make, versus like an Ephrodite hand cannon. Ephrodite would need like several shots and then some to probably take down a ghost.
Well,
not
and
just
see,
a
I
single
guess
shot.
Well, but see, here's my counter argument to that is that the rifleman is known for his bandolier of ghosts that he's sniped.
Meanwhile, I would make the question of how many shots did it take?
Well, okay, and that's fair.
To that, how many of those were done towards Guardian wielding ghosts?
Well, because I know the whole thing with Marin, she mentions that she keeps her ghost in hiding because she doesn't want it shot. So I don't think it's unheard of for him to do Guardian or to link to ghosts. But I totally see. I see what you're saying. We don't know how many shots,
especially considering too that we don't know how many ghosts have been out there, especially with frickin' Cyril running around like a jerk.
Yeah.
So I don't think the idea of a dark zone would be too far-fetched.
No, I'm going to say that the
so
dark
maybe
zone
it was like
still there.
Do you think that maybe that also created like a portable dark zone?
Yeah,
I don't know if it's a portable dark zone. Just
it was
a dark zone.
Also consider what Pirha had for his his arc buddies that he uses.
Right.
But having those projections and everything, there may have been another counteractive point that those things created. I don't know.
Yeah, it also bugs me that
the Tangled Shore especially is where the barons tended to hang around, and with that being such a place that is edged on the veil of light and darkness as much as it is, I think at a very large possibility that they kind of hang on that balance and that precipice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that's a very real possibility.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess my argument against the Dark Zone is because Dark Zones, the ghosts can't heal you either, can they? Or no, they just can't resurrect you from the true Dark Zones.
Just can't resurrect.
Right? Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. That's the confirmation piece that we've gotten of recent, especially with just with Forsaken on the whole, or not Forsaken, with the D2 with the red campaign.
Red campaign. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's fair.
Because the other point I was wondering if you were going to bring up was from the Black Armory, with the death that Ada had instilled on a couple of ghosts.
Mm-hmm. There's also, there is that too. I completely...
But it is confirmed, especially after just having gotten the weapon here. Izanagi's Burden is amazing, by the way. It was that gun that did it.
Right.
So that's an extremely special case with how with how that weapon would be. That's taking condensed 4 pieces of power and snapping them into one weapon with an obsidian accelerator, which we still don't necessarily know the full extent of. There's a lot of question pieces that we could still kind of work with on them, especially if the Black Armory happens to be linked to or in any way works with Vextech.
Oh, yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, there's a lot of possibilities here. I could also just be crazy. Don't say anything.
No.
I know I am.
Well, I think that's a pretty good summary view of Aunor. Do you guys have anything else that I'm forgetting?
Not a thing.
Mm-mm.
All right. Well, you guys want to do some quick shout-outs? Green, what about you? Why don't you lead us off here?
As far as shout-outs go?
Yes, please.
Shout out to the Nifty Nut House. And sleep.
What's
Both
that?
things, right? I know,
what
right?
is that?
Fleeting. It is fleeting is what it is.
I love it. I'm not even going to try to explain it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like my life. Fleeting.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Dress.
You got any other ones?
As far as like serious ones, I know there's a few charity streams that are going on right now. The St. Jude event, I believe, is going on currently. I think
I
Fife is
believe
there.
it just ended at this
Did
point.
it just end? Okay.
Yeah, because he had commented on having left and feeling like it was like post-con depression.
Oof.
Which I can imagine when you're doing something like that as heavy-handed for St. Jude and whatnot. Definitely.
Yeah, but it's more of a shout out to them and their continual work to help children out, and the different Twitch streamers that go with this event every year and help promote it. It's, I think, a really strong charity that I know we talk about it in the Destiny community a lot because of Guardian Con and everything, but it's one I actually believe in. So many charities can be deceiving in what they're actually using the money for. And this one I feel is actually utilizing things in a way that it means, like what it means, what it says it's going to, like they're going to do what they say they're going to do, which is nice. That's mainly my shout out is full St. Jude.
Beard, what about you?
Well, to those Guardian Con goers, since that's really not that far away at this point. If you guys are going to be out there, I know, I think all of us have confirmed we will be out there at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely looking forward to it because it's like my only vacation that I get anymore in a year. It still really isn't vacation, let me tell you what.
Let me tell you what.
Aside from that, I'm always humbled by the people that follow and listen to my stupid rants and antics, etc. I don't see why y'all care for them, but you seem to care for them, and I appreciate that. It's been nice getting back into creating content again as well. I had that very long hiatus, of course, that I was on, and coming back from that has just been nice to not only create, but to connect as well. I think that was one of the biggest things that I never really realized how, when I didn't have that connective piece, and then suddenly getting it back again, it was very different. So I don't know if anybody else kind of feels that same way or has felt that way before, if you know where I'm kind of coming from, but that's kind of my big thing right now, is just to all of you. And also to all of you who have given me ideas and thoughts and such like that, just to kind of look into what else we can kind of cover or think about or talk over, or what's piquing your interests and so on. And if it's not something that we can do here, then on occasion when we run out of ideas on the show, which doesn't necessarily seem like ever, realistically, I can usually present those ideas over here as well. You know, it kind of goes hand in hand. So any and all of that, I thank you guys very much for what you've done for this community and for mine. It helps out a ton. And Guardian Con is kind of at least one way that or at least I try to kind of pay back you guys for what you do over the course of time. It sucks that you got to pay money to come and say hi in a way, but in another, it's one of the only ways that we can really figure a real, I hate to use the term, but it still works, a safe space for all of us to kind of know this is something that we're all really into. This is something that we're all very much a part of. And it's still very much something that I think we all can agree is very important to us in our, if not day-to-day lives, then at least something that comes back to us with our hobby lives. So I'm thankful for absolutely every little piece that comes into this, because as we talked about at the top of the show with the guys over at Bungie, and this will be my last shout out as well, they are the ones that pretty well brought us all together in a lot of rights. They're the ones that gave us what we consider a great story to kind of sit here and talk about week after week, and have for the last, at least for me, 2 years now, I guess. And then for you guys even longer. And then for, just being able to bring other communities together, to have Bife, to have Sir Wallen when he was doing everything before he became incredibly busy, for Mylan, Matt, for any of them that are out there at this point that are talking about the story, and if not the story, then talking about just the game in general. It is obvious, no matter how much salt you want to deride on or think about, this is something that brought you together and brought you to a community that you ultimately care for. And I never want anybody to kind of lose sight of that. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to Bungie as well, because even with all the shakeups and everything, if you are losing people because of the decisions you are making, and they are the ones that have helped Forsaken to catapult within the community's mindset, and you are tweaking, working with, and altering how that perception is still felt, then I honestly will tell you, you are in the absolute right with the way that you are going, and the community will be behind you 110%. To those of you that are not necessarily behind that, but are mature enough to say this is not for me anymore, I thank you as well, because that also means that effectively you are allowing us as a community to flourish with those that have our minds, the mindset in mind to continue to let this pull forward. As painful as it is for us to lose those people, as much as we absolutely cared for their insight and their development and how they did everything with the story, I am absolutely thankful for every part of this creative process and how it is put together. So to Bungie, to any of those that are no longer with it, that stepped down willingly and on good terms and so on, thank you. You guys are doing just as much for those that are trying to turn this into something that you had envisioned just as much. So thank you.
Yeah, what he said. So yeah, but yeah, no, actually, I mean, again, I agree with what Beard is saying on pretty much all fronts there. I think that was really well put. The other thing is, I do also want to make, double down on the whole thing with Guardian Con. Just a, quick reminder too, that we do have t-shirts that are on sale for,
I got
for
mine
Guardian
in the
Con.
mail today.
Nice. Green has already got hers.
I gotta order mine. I keep forgetting about it.
I gotta do the same thing. I totally I helped put them up for sale, and I completely forgot to order it. So that's how my week's been going.
Same though.
Yeah, but so definitely get those if you want. And we'll see you guys, or we'll hopefully see you guys at GuardianCon. We're really looking forward to it. But yeah, until next week, we will talk to you later.
Bye.
With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/focusedfirechat. Links to all our episode archives can also be found at www.focusedfirechat.com. Please be sure to email us at focusedfirechat@gmail.com with any comments or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. Also, be sure to check out all the amazing work being featured over on thelorenetwork.com. So until next time, focus your fire, and may your light shine bright.